everyone, and a warm welcome from a rather damp France, where Anaiya is also speaking from. So the weather is similar in Puivert as it is here in Sainte-Colombe. The first thing I'm going to do is to light a candle to the sacred feminine for today. I will just show you that. So we have the candle lit, and I will just put it aside. And then I notice here that there aren't that many men who realize how important the sacred feminine is. Looking down the list of people here, which is a great pity. And I think we'll be sending out a strong message today to all the men who should be here, that they should have been here, and they will regret it. But anyway, we'll be able to make the recording available. What I want to do is just show you Anaiya's book here, which you all should get and read and study and apply. I reviewed it in the latest issue of the journal, which has just been available online. It's been posted out on Wednesday to members. And I think the review is actually on the page of the Mystics and Scientists. And so do have a look at that if you haven't had a look at it, and have a look at these two very, very powerful books, and that are from today's speakers. Fierce, Feminine, Rising. And when I read this book, I could feel palpably the powerful energy emanating from it. And I'm sure if you read it in turn, maybe some of you actually have read it, but if you read it, then you will feel this same energy. And I think I'll give you a sense of this by reading a paragraph from the preface, which is called Rewilding the Feminine. From what I understand, the fierce feminine's mission is twofold. Not only does she intend to address and rebalance the powers that govern the planet, by making sure every habitat has the right to thrive and that equilibrium is maintained, but she will also apply the same rigorous methods to fully balance and harmonize our own minds. Her journey is an inner and outer one. What we imagine is up ahead for the planet will be the same for our own brains. We will not be the spectators of this massive global cleanup campaign, but participants ourselves. We can have this the easy way by surrendering to these truths, or we will experience it the hard way by resisting the inevitable and having it forced upon us. And here is the very powerful sentence: change is coming, balance will prevail. Change is coming, balance will prevail. And so it's such a pleasure to introduce my good friend, Anaiya Sophia, who is one of the leading people in this area, in the context of the sacred feminine, the Mary Magdalene, sacred sexuality. And if you haven't visited her website beforehand, then you should certainly do so afterwards. In fact, you'll want to do so and make contact with her. I should also mention that she and her husband Pete, they run a guest house in Puivert called Occitanie, and you can look that up on the website as well, on the internet as well. So if you're coming down to this area, then you can get the opportunity to spend some time with Anaiya by staying in her guest house. So little plug for your guest house, Anaiya.
Thank you.
And I'll just hand over to you. And we're so looking forward to this session with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, Andrew. And thank you to everyone here on the screen, welcoming me into your group. I would very much like to bring in the presence of the land that I'm sitting on, that David is sitting on. And that is the old Cathar heartland of southern France and a little bit of northern Spain, because I cannot help but feel this needs to be mentioned on this gathering together. If you don't know your history of the Cathars, we can send out a little link. I don't want to go into it here, but we could say at this very early stage that perhaps the Cathars are the spiritual descendants of Mary Magdalene, of John the Beloved, of a very, very pure essence of life and beingness, which to me is that sacred feminine presence again. Now, 699 years ago, the last Cathar, parfait, pure one, holy man, was being burnt at the stake. And whilst his flesh was setting aflame, in joy, in elevation, as his eyes lifted to the sky, speaking to the one who sent him, he made it very clear that in 700 years we shall return, when the laurel turns green again. That's one of our native trees. Now that 700-year mark is 2021. That's next year. And I often quizzed this understanding. What do you mean when the laurel turns green again? This is one of our native trees. Sometimes the offshoot of that is called a box tree. Now, 2.5 years ago, we had an invasion of Asian moth butterflies that absolutely just turned up 1 month. And at the beginning, it was all very delightful because these dancing little white butterfly moths were everywhere. And when you walked past, they'd suddenly plume up into the air. And it was very magical. And we were all so impressed with this new creature in our midst. Towards the end of the summer, we realized that they were nesting in the box and laurel trees. And within a year, everything had turned dry and brown and barren. They'd absolutely stripped the surface resources of that native tree. That's when my attention started to pick up on that prophecy yet again. Now it is May, and so far no one has seen any Asian moth butterflies, and yet last year was a significant drop in numbers. Which means if they don't come this year, that tree, that Guillaume de Bellibus, the last Cathar parfait, that laurel shall turn green again, will absolutely coincide with this 700-year prophecy of the Cathar people. Also next year is the 777th anniversary of the fall of Montségur. So there's quite a lot happening in this region that myself and David are sat on right now. It seems I am going into it a little bit. I have no notes prepared. I am really open to the Spirit, wherever that Spirit wants to take us this morning. Let me just lay out a few guidelines. I'm going to speak for 45 minutes, and then we're going to have a little break. And then I'll return with like a session 2. So just know we're only here for 40 minutes as this transmission comes through. Why am I so interested in the Cathars? I'll tell you why. I believe they were not only holding, impeccably holding, but acting upon the way of the Christ path that Mary Magdalene herself brought these Occitan people, these already heretical people. It's as if they preserved perfectly, in the most holy way, her understanding, the feminine understanding of the Christ initiation and what that was looking like in the Holy Land, and Mary's viewpoint on the whole proceeding, the whole initiation. The Cathars do not necessarily revere, they absolutely recognize and appreciate, but there is no reverence towards Jesus Christ in the way that there is reverence towards Mary Magdalene. It's not so much Mary Magdalene herself, it's what came through her. This is, in my heart, she was the voice, the clear, lucid, penetrating, and surrendered voice of the sacred feminine. And for some reason, 700 years ago, the people here could hear this voice, this transmission, and they kept it alive, and they kept it secret, and they kept it safe. Earlier, before the Cathars, they never called themselves the Cathars. This is just a name that got plonked on them by the Roman Catholic Church. So this message, Mary's sacred feminine message of the full transfiguration, nothing less than what Christ himself went through, is laying dormant-ish here. It's in the land, it's in the locals, it's in the springs, it's in the forests. So behind me is the French Pyrenees, just out the window back there. So I just would love to bring that beautifully, amazingly green and fluffy, verdant land in as well, because we've had so much rain and sun and rain and sun. So the land is exploding. The reason I'm so enthralled with the land is because these Cathar folk often got burnt, definitely killed, but what they were carrying in their blood, in their flesh, in their beingness, would have fallen down into the land, and the land would have absorbed it all and kept it safe. So their essence is in the land. And that is why all we have to do is walk those old Cathar paths, better still, with bare feet, and literally draw up that mystery. What was it that they were keeping safe and keeping pure? I cannot help but see that we are in a similar time again, my dear friends, as we are forced into lockdown, as we have this virus around us, and as our life is absolutely changing from one era, one age to another. When you look at the Cathar faith, the Cathar principles, it's very interesting and can easily be overlaid our lifestyle today. They believed in two gods. One God who was hard and punishing and had lots of rules and lots of control and lots of domination, and literally built the world with a little w, if you know what I mean. So that's, for me, that's the God of capitalism. It's the God of cities and structures and shopping malls and legalities and the world that we have had a little pause from recently. Now, the other God is this beautiful, benevolent, loving, could easily be seen as mothering, but that does not mean female. This benevolent, loving, forgiving, compassionate, eternal presence of love. And so the Cathars chose very much to withdraw from the world with a little w, because they felt that that world had nothing for them. There was nothing of interest in that way of life. And so they retreated into the caves, into the forests, into the meadows, into the woodland. And that became their abode, that became their resting place. And that is where they gave their services. They didn't have a church. The church was the woodland and a gathering amongst people. So what is it that we are experiencing now as we move from one age to another? I believe we have the same question being flagged up before us. A question that seemingly looks like stark, rigid duality. Do we want this world, the one that's crumbling? Do we want this world, the one that's incredibly pure and has withdrawn from the world with a little w? Or perhaps, if we just last long enough for our mind to really find the eye of the needle and slip through to that third potential, not this nor that, but the third potential, the unknown, the mystery, then perhaps we will have a rewired mind that's connected to a rewired heart and body and beingness that can slip through the eye of the needle, appear on the other side, and be the fresh, innocent face of this new earth that is in our midst. It's right there, like a little shimmering mirage, with the question, are you or are you not going to rise up and become this? I believe the sacred feminine in her light and dark persona is about opening this potential, this possibility, this birth canal for us to go through that eye of the needle, that ultimate initiation. At the moment, we are a couple of days into a 40-day descent into the underworld. On May the 13th, Venus seemingly fell from the sky because she's going down into the underworld for 40 days. She's following the story of Persephone, or the story of Inanna, where this beautiful light face is going all the way down through the 7 gates of the underworld, discarding all of her divine attributes at every doorway, like her crown, her lapis necklace, all of these divine elements that gave her the superpowers, until she hits the throne room in her absolute essence. There's nothing of an external fashion that is bringing through her divinity. So the crown, the belt, the jewels have gone. Inanna believes for a moment she has lost her divinity, that she has surrendered it in order to meet her dark twin sister, Ereshkigal. Now, when that happens, what that sacred feminine who's mapping the story, who's bringing the elements together, who sent Venus on her journey, who also imbues Ereshkigal, the dark twin, what is potentially possible here is for Inanna to not say, oh my God, I'm meeting my dark twin. What is she going to do to me? And not for Ereshkigal to say, oh, and here comes the light one. How nice. But for those two elements to shatter that sense of duality and absolutely in the deepest, most incomprehensible way, unify right at the center of that dark, frightening, mysterious underworld. Inanna and Ereshkigal become one. Persephone and Pluto become one. The ultimate light with the ultimate dark, fusing in a lasting way. And that is what resurfaces back up into the world again. So us humans, we're all on this journey right about now. North Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. So if anything should show up in the next 38 days, you know what this is serving. It is serving this ultimate initiation, and that is what the sacred feminine brings. And she can bring it in the most pleasing, heavenly, holy, tender way, or she can bring it in a fierce, feminine, outrageous, uncontrollable, wild way. Change is afoot. The sacred feminine always brings change. Now, I'd like to put a little message out there right now to the men folk, because this sacred feminine energy is not only in women. And if you think for any moment that it's not going to come your way, it's not going to emerge within you, it will probably emerge outside of you, first of all, in your female friends, in your partners, in your daughters, mothers, and most definitely world events. Because if you please turn in and start to look at your deep internal self, you will find that there is a very patient feminine energy inside of you who is absolutely parched and hungered and quite desperate to be born within you. And here's the big word, again. We can even, if it makes you feel so uncomfortable, just remove that word feminine and stay with the word sacred. That is what is waiting patiently to rise within you again. The sacred, the internal, the feeling, the intuitive, the instinctive, the creative, the visionary, the unknown, and the changeable. Now, I understand for the men folk, because my husband's downstairs and he works with men, and he's forever telling me this thing about change is really uncomfortable for the masculine mind. And of course, the masculine mind can also be in females. The masculine mind loves order and loves structure and loves following things step by step by step. But my beloved dear humans, we've run out of that time. We have spent that luxury. That step-by-step, rigid, linear process is being taken away from us right now in this age. And I understand for the masculine mind, it's a feeling of the handrail being taken away. The banister's gone. The thread that I was lovingly following has just been taken away from me. And now we have that mind activity, that anxiety, the where, the who, the when, the maybe, where, I need my answers, I need my answers. So now we're in that strong dualistic fish on again. That's that descent into the underworld. And to the men who's listening, it's coming. You will have this experience. Please listen to these words. You are being invited to come out of a dualistic, structured, linear, I have the answer mind. None of us have the answers. And in that cracking open of the mind, you will find the sacred. That is where we find the feminine essence rising up inside of you. That is like coming out of a great big long sleeping beauty sleep, where suddenly the things that were important are no longer important anymore. And the sacred brings a deep breath back to the heart, the life of the heart, where you will realize just how immensely connected you are with everything that has a heartbeat, everything that has blood, everything that has life. And to begin with, for the masculine, that is a little bit too much emotion. There's an overwhelm. There's a, no, I don't want to feel this. This is too big, too overwhelming, too engulfing. And I just want to say to you, be with it. Trust this awakening. Trust the overwhelm. The overwhelm is a surge of energy to just lift the cap that may have been stuffing all of this down, whether it's in your throat, your solar plexus, your heart. Let the overwhelm come. Let yourself, and here comes my favorite word, annihilated. Everyone says I chose that word on purpose. I didn't. So it's a palpable thing. This is not something we go through in our minds and in our meditations. Before we have a little experience, let me check the time. Yes, perfect. So since we've been going into this underworld, I've been looking out into the world news. Where is it? Where is it? Where is this going to come to us? And of course, recently, and I only want to give you this as an example, it may not be true, probably, knowing our news channels, it's not true. But it doesn't matter because it sets in the mind a journey. So a classic piece of news that's coming up recently is that Trump is employing the military to make sure we have this mandatory vaccination. And of course, my American friends are absolutely pulling their hair out. I suspect that this is just another element coming into our great big cauldron of uncomfortable experience. It's a thought form. It's a potential. It is by no means a reality, but by golly, for us mystics, we have to add this ingredient. We got to put it in our cauldron. We got to take it on. We got to chew it. We got to be with it, and absolutely watch our reaction to it. I was speaking to Pete this morning about this, saying, wow, let's just imagine we do have a tank outside of our front doors with a whole bunch of soldiers armed with their vaccinations. And of course, you know, they roughly grab our arm. And of course, we're like, no, I do not give my consent. Now, my mystical mind really amps that one up. I really get into it from both sides. The person having her arm pushed into, and also the soldier absolutely convinced he's doing the thing. And so I'm acting them both out in my mystical experience and feeling the duality right there, face to face. And not even 2 minutes to midnight, 2 seconds to midnight, something happens that neither myself or the soldier could possibly have forecast. The birth of that third reality. And I believe that is the absolute nectar that the sacred feminine wants to say and reveal to us all today, this morning. That is where she's going to take us. We might have to be the soldier, and we might have to be having our arm brutally yanked. I would like to say, in this moment, as the energy is flowing, I can say I am 100% utterly, absolutely, truthfully sure of this. And why I want to tie us now with the Cathars back then. They faced the same situation, and I suspect same energy. It's always been here. It's an element within our creation that produces that strong dualistic challenge. You could say, yes, but the Cathars died. They did die. They did go to the stake. Yeah, they did. But we're still speaking about them. And we're still speaking about them, possibly with even more conviction and more passion. Did their message get lost? No. Are we all waiting on tenterhooks for the 700-year anniversary? Yes. Have the people gathered? Have these mysterious foreigners all moved into this corner of France? Yes. Are we back again? Yes. Oh God, yes. We are back with bells on. Was it extinguished? Was it squashed? No. Was it just sleeping peacefully until the right time again to pick up where we left off? Yeah. Did anyone suffer? No. Why? Because that suffering is actually the joy and the ecstasy and the building of holiness to make that transition from life to death. You just have to look at your Christian mystics to realize that is the truth. Julienne of Norwich, St. Catherine of Siena, St. Catherine of Alexandria. Did they shy away from suffering? No. Did they actually at times, like Perpetua, cut her own throat because the centurion couldn't? As mystics, if we're not already tapping into this quality that needs to come at the 2 seconds to midnight scenario, this is where we must go. We got to feel that again, I believe, dearest friends. And for us men on the call, who are of the mystical persuasion, if it's not already free flowing inside of you, let it come. Let it saturate you. And thank whoever is that might be on the outside, poking and provoking and trying to help you remember. Because it is an all hands on deck moment. So I'm going to take a little sacred pause here. See how you're all doing with this material. Possibly going back to David, perhaps.
Thank you. Wow. Wow. Being down here, I'm part of this, as you know. I mean, why did I come back to this area? Well, it's the same mission. And this revitalization of the feminine, love, wisdom, power as well, spiritual power. And it is in the land, you're right. And when you walk some of these paths, I remember last year just coming up to Montségur and being on a path with some friends and realizing that these are the very paths that these people would have gone on in pairs. And also the Cathars had women initiates, women priestesses, if you like, the most famous of which is Esclarmonde de Foix. And you can find an article about her on Anne Baring's website. And so this is really what you've been saying is of the essence of the spiritual agenda for our time. And I'd like just to mention at this point the Gospel of the Beloved Companion. And this is something which some of you will know that I've been, as it were, majoring on for the last 18 months. The Gospel of the Beloved Companion, I'll put it in the chat box. I reviewed it about 2 years ago, and I've written a commentary on that and the Gospel of John. But bringing this Mary Magdalene energy, which you've been embodying and talking about, and especially this incredible journey from the dark to the light and joining the two and up the cosmic tree. And this is the journey that we're all making. And I loved your third way
Mm.
third way, because to me it's so tempting, and we've probably all been doing this, to project the evil intentions onto other people. It's happening a lot at the moment, and we don't know. And as you say, a lot of people that we are projecting things onto are actually well intentioned from the point of view that they believe is right. The Catholic Church and the Inquisition, they were well intentioned in the sense they thought they were doing the right thing. And that's always obviously a big trap, that we think we're doing the right thing when we're not doing the right thing at all. But I thought the intolerance, the suppression of opinions, this is all going on now. I thought there's a wonderful parallel.
Maybe what I can do, just to bring it even deeper into reality, is, of course, relationship. Whether we're in opposite gender relationship or same-sex gender relationship, this same dualistic fission is absolutely going to be happening quietly and consistently in the household. This masculine, feminine, a very abrasive way. The beginning of the journey is kind of like a battle for supremacy. Patriarchy, matriarchy, which way are we going to go? And this just funnels all the way down to male, female in the household. My way, your way. So, this period, every form of duality is up for work, for energy, for looking for that third option. So keep that in your mind, and when you see yourself being triggered, getting drawn into something, I've tattooed it on my brain. What is the third option in all of this? It's not my thing, it's not his thing. What is the third? And the sacred feminine within both will know the third. You'll just sense it just bubbles up. But it means absolutely laying the ego down. And, that's what we're all in as human folk at the moment. So speaking of goddesses, mystics, and holy women, I want to really bring in that 2 seconds to midnight element again. All of these holy women and mystics, and many of the goddesses as well, had this incredible moment of transformation at the 2 minutes to midnight moment. And you could say, yes, but it's just a story, it's just a myth, it's just a legend. Then I would say, well, how come it always ends in that way? How come they don't actually die of intolerable suffering? Because in the moment, that is what's happening. But at the 2 second mark, something unknown happens. And I thought, before we get into our second section, I just want to make sure that the guys really get a really good, juicy visual of the underworld journey. We did the Ereshkigal girl and Inanna's tale. Let's do it in a man's way. So let's just imagine you yourself, as you are, dearest men, finding yourself at the entrance to the underworld, where you're met by all sorts of gargoyles and sort of demonic guards, who, in their neutrality, worth noting, in their neutrality, simply say, you can't come in with your rucksack. You can't come in with your belt. You can't come in with your jacket. You got to take something off every time you pass through a gate. So by the time you actually get down to the throne room, you are in your birthday suit. And you are en route now to meet your dark twin, which could be, in my circles, it could be a Fauci. It could be a Bill Gates. It could be a Donald Trump or a Boris Johnson. But the slight issue here is that they have your face. It is your absolute replica of your face on their visage, on their appearance. And so here we go. We have that duality. What are you going to do down there? Of course, the mind is going to go into immediate duality. Fauci and his vaccination. And Fauci is going to look at you and go, hippie, hippie. What's going to happen at the 2 seconds to midnight moment where you and Fauci and Boris and Trump and whoever it is that you most despise? What's going to happen when your two hearts genuinely open to one another? Because whatever, as David was saying, whatever we're projecting onto them, they are so projecting onto us. What happens when our hearts and souls and sisterhood suddenly starts emerging inside of us, and we take them into our arms and we shake hands like good men, and we slap each other on the back, and we lay down our duality. Who is going to walk out of the underworld now? And when we walk out of the underworld back to the surface of earth, we are bringing our medicine. Whatever happens down there, it's not for us. We are now drawn to serve. We're here to deliver our medicine out to the ones who haven't gone into the underworld yet. So that's a lovely man's tale of going down and meeting his dark twin. What I thought I'd do now is just step back a little bit so that you can see my cross-leggedness. Because I'm a yoga person, I've enacted this underworld scene in the body to be done at times when I'm really up against that seemingly opposing force. So I'll take my little microphone with me, so you should be able to see me, no problem, and still hear me. Right, so I call this a sacred marriage ceremony. I start like this. I'm cross-legged. We can even be in a chair, we can be on the edge of the bed, but we start off like this. Hands relaxed and on the knees. What I could put in my right side perhaps is like a sensation of, I am born ready. I came to earth in this incarnation for this time. And I know that is a palpable truth. So here I have, on my right-hand side, I have born ready. You know, there's a part of me that's like, yes, it's time for Thecula, the Christian martyr, to rise within me again. And a sense of almost excitement of this moment we're in. But it's certainly not a flippant excitement. It's more of a finally we're here. Finally we're here, and I've got some good resources. I'm ready. I'm born ready. I've always been ready for this. On the left-hand side, I have my, the daughter within me. Will I ever see mum and dad again? Will I be able to fly or sail to England again? Will I actually get to hold my mum and dad? Or am I going to have to watch them go on Skype? Because my father, who is already terminally ill, is he going to pick up the virus? So this part of me, at the beginning, has no palpable sense of this one. And so this is how I do the work. I play 2 pieces of music. One piece that is absolutely congruent with these 2 qualities. So I call this one the afraid to die. Born ready, afraid to die. So the afraid to die one, paradoxically, goes first. And she or he lifts off the left knee, and travels on their own merit, using up possibly the last of their resources to make this journey, to take this pilgrimage into the realm where I find my other piece, born ready. And this afraid to die character uses all of her last resources to bring the born ready part to the midline. As if to say, I acknowledge you, I know you exist, and I myself am going to support you, I'm going to carry you. The duration of this song, as I imbue all my appreciation, all of my acknowledgement, and all of my intimacy, by realizing you absolutely do exist. So all of my own personal human fears, mum and dad, will I hold them? Will I kiss them? Will I ever go back home to England? That part who is so afraid and so fragile and so vulnerable has chosen to come and pick up this mighty side of me that's born ready and excited finally that this moment is here. And even yogically, I can just let my shoulder and elbow just go because I am learning, here's the paradox, to trust the part of me who's absolutely afraid and scared to death. This will be a very emotional and grieving and joyful process, especially if you've chosen the perfect piece of music. When I do this side, I always choose a soundtrack from the Da Vinci Code. I think it's called, yeah, that's right, Chevaliers of the Sand Grail. So I feel all of that rising to the challenge. And yet, it's the most frightened part of me who's carrying this immense weight that I am. And then after the duration of the song, I put that part down where I give myself a personal handhold, where my frightened self eventually is going to go up the whole length of my arm, putting somatic, deep, present touch to all the times I have been victorious. So my frightened self is acknowledging all the times I really did stand up, speak out, rise and shine like a phoenix. And then I come all the way back down, give myself a little handhold again. And then I sort of float off back to my knee as if that was my last breath. And so now this one's in the unknown. She's spent all of her energy acknowledging this one. So now up we go. And now the born ready is coming into the domain of the place who's afraid to die, afraid of the vaccinations, afraid of, will I ever go to England? And this one just swoops in and brings this little tender, fragile being to the midline as if to say, I've got you, sweetheart. I've got you. You got to remember, this one, am born ready. So those moments when you melt down and silently cry in front of your parents, not showing them your tears because you are quietly keeping them going as you go through this massive ordeal yourself, I am holding you. I use a piece of music by Michelle Featherstone. It's called I Am There Too. It is the most, it's a woman on her piano. There's never, ever a dry eye in the house. And these tears are the tears of resilience and courage and fortitude and more of the I can do this. It is immensely healing. And then we graciously put this one down, personal handhold. And then the born ready one, again, somatically, silently touching the most pristine, gorgeous moments of vulnerability. So for instance, you know, me on Skype with mum and dad, absolutely holding, because I know they're thinking it. We're just not talking about it yet. So I'm just acknowledging those vulnerable moments. And the times when I do open up to full trust of this unknown. So it's a silent and wordless meeting that's going on with this touch. My frightened self knows exactly what my born ready self is touching. Can't speak about it, but I know exactly what it is. And then the third phase, because that's not the end. The third phase is this moment where you've acknowledged both, and the essences of both are learning to be together and make a fusion and make a sacred marriage. So now we need a third piece of music, or perhaps it's silence itself, where you simply are the fusion. You're in the third element right now. You're born ready and you're afraid to die, and you are something else. We just don't have the terminology for it yet. And that practice, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes. That practice can harmonize any opposition. So perhaps you could put in your right arm the masculine mind, the part of you that's looking for an answer. I need to know what is going on. And the part of you who's totally comfortable with not needing to know. And so you bring those together. This is such a powerful, such a embodied practice of harmonizing the masculine, the feminine, the sacred, the profane, the left and the right, the light and the dark. It is an absolute gem. So with that floating within us, I would love to just bring you just a few examples of these 2 seconds to midnight scenario from our little collection of goddesses, holy women, and mystics. So we mentioned Perpetua earlier. Perpetua was a Christian from Tunisia. And so she's newly born into this lovely fledgling, gorgeous, pure faith. The church hasn't really got its hands on it yet. And so our beautiful Perpetua decides to just refuse to do any more blood sacrifice. In the Roman way, I believe it's weekly, it's just simply part of being Roman and towing the line as a Roman. Everybody was expected to make a little animal sacrifice once a week, just to keep things going, keep the Romans happy, show that we're still part of the Roman way, but we're just practicing this lovely fledgling faith. But Perpetua, who has been so struck by the beauty of Christ's, maybe Mary's teachings, especially the sacred heartness of it all, and she just decided, no, I shall not be spilling any more blood. And so, of course, that draws attention of the Roman guard, that no blood is pouring from this household. And there was a tolerance of the Christian faith whilst being Roman. This is before that intolerance. But unfortunately, Perpetua brings in that gaze of the Roman stare. And so she's arrested, and the case builds and the case builds, and she just keeps holding her ground. No, no, no animal blood flowing from me. I simply cannot. It's not that I'm refusing not to. I simply cannot. This faith has sunk into me. I cannot and will not do it. So, do what you must. And Perpetua's case grows more and more serious until she actually finds herself in the dungeons of the arena, where it's only a matter of time before she faces the games. Perpetua is so in the light of her faith and accepting, okay, games it is, that she starts to befriend fellow prisoners, and she starts to preach and heal and bring in the beautiful grace of the Holy Spirit. Let's just go back to the Cathars for a moment, of the Consolamentum. So these beautiful, pure, original Christians had generous access to this holy and redeeming force. Just thought I'd pop that in there. So she's absolutely changing the nature of the dungeon environment, and everybody is being given direct contact with this redeeming, holy, sacred force. So what was once a very dark world is now a golden world. And so the time has come. And Perpetua and a group of other who are now martyrs are drawn into the games. And there's a little bunch of 5 of them, 2 ladies, I believe, and 3 men. And of course, out come the lions and out come the bears. And these young people, apart from Perpetua at this stage, are taken by the animals. But for some reason, every time a lion or a lioness or a bear starts to come for Perpetua, they turn away and simply cannot take her, cannot slice her, cannot eat her. And so the Roman governor and the people are baying for some kind of order to take charge. The animals back away and they just start licking their paws. The bear, rolls on his back and just I just want to sleep. I've already ate a few people. I'm not interested in this one. And she's praying and nothing is happening. The animals are uninterested by taking this lovely, fabulous young lady who's just praying, until finally the Roman governor orders a centurion to go out into the arena and just cut her throat. And so this formidable Roman centurion, who's proud to have been given such a task to finally shut this woman up, strides over, draws his sword, and then looks down at her, praying, and is immediately transformed and transfigured into the faith there and then, and simply cannot do it. There is a darshan. All the stories tell of this exchange that's going on in their eyes. The young eyes of Perpetua looking up, knowing this is her moment, because it is her moment, and the Roman centurion looking down and absolutely refusing, I cannot do this, and seeing the truth in her eyes. So he staggers backwards, lowers his sword, and cannot do this. The Roman governor is furious and commanding down, take her life. And so Perpetua takes the Roman sword, the Roman centurion's hand, places it against her throat, still holding darshan, still eye to eye, and cuts her throat open. Because of Perpetua's writings, we know that she knew where she was going onto after this life. And the Roman centurion is in Darshan. So however intense it was at that moment when she grabbed his hand, it's now gone to the next level. Is he beside himself in guilt and shame for taking her life? No. Has he been transformed forevermore? Yes. What about the spectators in the arena? 50-50. Maybe on a good day, 80-20, 80% transformed, 20% still holding on. That is the flipping grace of the sacred feminine in Perpetua and the Roman centurion and the people who took the bait and went on the transformational journey. It's not just her. She's just a catalyst for all to awaken to it. What's going to happen in the heart of the Roman centurion? It's going to break open, and he is going to grieve and lament lifetimes of being separated from what he's just seen in Perpetua's. What about the people in the arena? Same thing. The moment was a moment of immense grace. And whoever saw that with their own eyes will pass it on and pass it on and pass it on in their stories. And that is exactly what is happening right here. That is the great gift that the holy mystics bring us in their stories of transfiguration. And of course, I can hear everyone's mind, including my own, saying, does it mean we all have to die? Who knows? Let's do our practice. Who knows? But am I in any sense of pain telling this story? No. And are you in any sense of pain receiving the story? No. But I believe we're in that time again. We're in that time where it's time for a change from one age to the other. And it's this element, it's this agent, it's this catalyzing force that brings us here. Another little piece, if you haven't already had enough. My favorite story, the story of Thecula, another Christian mystic. So she's out there in the middle of the games, and out come the lions for the very first time. 3 lions, 2 male, 1 female. The lioness bounds over, ba-bam, ba-bam, bounding towards Thecula. And of course, Thecula must be like, here is my moment. But the lioness pauses at her feet, goes down onto her haunches, and starts licking Thecula's feet, and pawing at her with a soft claw. And then she turns on the other 2 lions and protects Thecula from being taken. And so the Roman governor has to scratch his head and go, oh God, now what? Oh, I know. Let's send her into the pool of wild sea lions. Thecula has been refused baptism by Paul, even though Thecula was his most devout devotee. He kept saying, now's not the time. Now's not the time. I can't baptize you. Now is not the time. And so Thecula, in the middle of the games, sees the pool with the sea lions, where she decides to jump in and baptize herself in that moment of the games. She goes down 3 times in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. I declare myself baptized. There's the sacred feminine right there. A normal person thinks they're entering the water to get eaten by wild sea lions. Those who are fully in it see an opportunity for self-baptism, not knowing what that's going to bring, but what it brings, according to the tale, is a circle of white fire around Thecula, and the sea lions can't get to her. Thecula would not have known that. She just saw the opportunity. I can finally die in my faith, but she doesn't die. And when something like that happens in the games, the governor can only, it's been 3 attempts now, he can only declare her free to go. And that's what happened. She's free to go. The animals didn't eat her. The lioness fought off all the others. She baptized herself in the pool, and everyone has seen. So even if I, the governor, decide she's got to go, I'm going to cause civil war. I have no choice but to surrender and clearly allow this woman to walk free. So if that isn't enough, gorgeous, fabulous, hopefully in your body recognition, then I don't know what else can do it, but I'm convinced you've received your medicine. Yes, and it's about that time. So perhaps going over to David.
Well, thank you. What an adventure. I should also mention that you have stories on your website. And I know Marianne, my wife, has been listening to your stories every evening, and she's absolutely enchanted by this. And we've been enchanted. I've certainly been enchanted by the power and images and meaning and significance of these 2 minutes to midnight moments, and how they can witness and resonate down the centuries. And of course, the oral teaching of traditional cultures is always in stories. That's how people learn. It's how they learn about courage. We've just been talking about courage, conviction, integrity, beauty, all of these. These stories can inspire us, as you've inspired us in this way. And I didn't know either of these stories. And so I'm very grateful, to have my knowledge expanded in that way. Thank you. Thank you. So shall we open up for some interaction?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe one little piece I could just add whilst you're trying to formulate your question, because the mind has been scattered.
Yeah.
In the heart of deep Gnostics, deep mystics, like yourselves, there is this quiet understanding that the opposing force, the dark force, is an ally. When you really go in, it is an ally, not because we're meant to accept it, but because we are being invited to really deepen our faith and our path and the way we travel our path. It's an agent of ever deepening faith. Our Faucis and our Trumps and our Borises, they are an ally of really getting us to the 2 seconds to midnight place. And that is what I love about Gnosticism. That's what I love about the mystical path. It takes a while to get there, but when you do get there, you can just sit down into this well-worn, leathery armchair, and it's so well-worn because you've been there lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and the armchair has really got to know the shape of your seat. So you just like, oh God, ha, I'm in the armchair of gnosis. This fear of the mandatory vaccination is my most perfect, tailor-made ally to keep remembering my tales of Thecula and Perpetua, especially the one about the self-baptism. That is just, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Fauci, Trump, Army. Thanks.
There's
So, yeah, questions.
The Christopher Fry poem, which Sir George Trevelyan used to recite, which I think is the summons to a high crusade. He really represented that masculine, the sword. The sword. I knew him very well. He was a mentor for me, and I thought about bringing it at the beginning, but no, it needs to come in maybe now. Just this. Thank God our time is now. He said, "Will you wake for pity's sake? Will you wake for pity's sake?" And when wrong comes up to face us everywhere, and I haven't learned it completely myself, but it is this thank God our time is now, which is the born ready part. But I'm sure everybody here recognizes that we have these two, afraid to die and the born ready, and I love that. I thought those really, in pulling those together and for each to support the other.
Yes.
That was what's so beautiful about your ceremony, that vulnerable part of us was the one that took the initiative.
Totally. That's the crushing blow right there.
Yeah. I mean, what a message. And that all of us, I think, can resonate with that. And it's a challenge. And but it's its own message. The process is its own message in that sense. And you're absolutely right. What we see as the so-called enemy. I mean, I remember when Trump was elected, people said, "Well, at least that'll wake us up. We'll get our act together." Well, takes a bit of time.
Yes.
Takes a bit of time. Now we have a question here. Would you see the connection of what you're saying to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, especially the transforming demons phase? And this is Sue, who's writing a book about this transforming demons phase of the hero's journey. What do you think about that?
There's just one answer. Yes.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yes. Yes. Lost for words, except is the exercise available or is it in your book?
I have a very early YouTube snippet of me explaining the process again. No, this one hasn't been written down. I want to keep this one oral because
Okay.
it needs to come with the emotion. So if David and Andrew are okay with it, we can slip that link in.
Yeah, I was thinking that at the end of the day, we'll compile links, from the group as well. So if there's something that any of us here would like to think is valuable to share with each other, then we can send it all to Andrew, and then Andrew can send an email out with obviously the access to the recording as well, so that people could re-look at what you've done from the recording, and then they'll be able to do the exercise as you've done it. We still yes, there's the people need to be lost for words. Can I bring here's another question. Does born ready mean something beyond us, or that we may choose to follow or work with the afraid to die?
Yeah, that's a good opening doorway. As a Gnostic, one of the pillars of Gnostic understanding is that we made 3 promises. When, I often imagine us as like little, just little globes of light, nameless, faceless, genderless, and we're just sort of like semi-sleeping. And then, the absolute one says, okay, guys, who's opting in for human life? And we sort of go, yeah, still very sleepy. And so God summons us, a whole arena of little souls poking their arms up. And he or she says, well, it's time, therefore, to make your 3 promises. The 3 promises is like the ejector seat. The 3 promises is what gives us the propulsion to get down into our mother's bellies. And so the first promise is a promise that we make to ourselves. Quiet, secret promise. We have no name, we have no face, we have no gender. We just like send these inner whisper to ourselves. I promise. Can't tell you. And then the second promise is to all the other little souls that we're kind of in this experience with. Oh my God, this little bunch, we've all agreed to go together. And so we whisper a promise to all these other little spheres of light. And now, of course, we got the third promise, where we look before the absolute one, because we know this is the ejector seat moment. And we just utter, oh gosh, it makes it so emotional. We utter this final last promise to the absolute one, which we know is going to be the moment where you're not going to be able to see him or her anymore for a while. And so as the last bit goes out, we're down. We're in the wormhole. And we're coming down into our mother's belly. And so the born ready is the part of us that can remember those promises. But it's going to take a lot of tears, beautiful tears, to get those promises back down on paper again.
It's remembering. That means so much to me, that the remembering, as Plotinus said, is for those who have forgotten. And that's all of us in that moment. That's the fall into the Gnostic and the Catholic understandings, the fall into duality, the fall into darkness, the fall into forgetfulness, the fall into sleep. So it's about remembering and waking up.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're all here to try to do. So I love that. The ejector seat. It's a great analogy. I was thinking about the parachute, sort of jumping out of the plane with the ejector seat. There's no parachute; you're straight in there.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So this really is this is very much my own understanding of this path of, and our identities, our social identities are a kind of thick covering that we need to somehow penetrate and get through in order to remember who we really are.
Yeah.
Remember who we really are.
Nameless, faceless, genderless.
Someone says, I love them. Maybe our sense of loss and grief is about leaving this realm and our promises. Let me share something with you, which is the sunbeams of the Paneurythmy, Peter Dunos Paneurythmy, the sunbeam. The symbolism is that you move away from the center, which is this moment, the promises, the remembering. Move away from the center to the edge, to the periphery. And then you move back to the center. But it doesn't all happen at once. You go away, then you come in, and you go back out, and you come back in. And then you circle round each other in the two pairs. And then at the end, there's this incredible piece of music. And all you say to yourself is in Bulgarian, you say Raya, Raya. And you wave your arms like this. And Raya is paradise. And as we wave our arms in the Rila Mountains with our brothers and sisters, we remember. We remember. And because the music is so exquisite, and there is a moment of this, what I call divine nostalgia.
Oh, lovely.
Ah, and you think, that's it.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, what a space we're all in.
Mm. Mm.
I wonder if we should, is there any other sort of exercise that we might share at this moment? Or it just feels like not a time for questions and analytical mind.
Mm. Yeah, I'd love to bring in the gorgeousness of living a life that is filled with grief and gratitude. I've been listening in a little bit with Stephen Jenkinson. He's one of us. There's a beautiful snippet in a movie about him called Grief Walker. In his earlier years, he was a little bit of a death doula to help people die well, die honestly. And there's a beautiful scene where he's drifting along the canoe and he's looking at the roots of an old tree, just like dripping into the water. And the person filming him says, "Oh, Stephen, God, that's beautiful. Look at those roots, the way they just, gnarly fall into the water." And he has a bit of a gratitude moment. And Stephen says, "Can you hold that whilst you realize or contemplate that there will be a time when the roots aren't there? They've gone." And so the guy's like, oof, going into a bit of grief there. And then he takes it a stage further. "And then you'll be gone and you won't be able to look anymore." Oh, that's the eye of the needle, beloved friends. This union between grief and gratitude and how they sustain and deepen one another. So that the masculine in men and women hasn't been none too keen on grief. They're like, let's avoid that at all costs. Feminine part of us, men and women, says, no, silly. That's the one that opens the door. Grief and gratitude, grief and gratitude, grief and gratitude. A bit like what you were saying, David, in the middle and now to the edge again, in the middle and now to the edge again. We need not be afraid of our grief. Stephen Jenkinson is definitely a chap to have a good look and listen to. And I can't help feeling, I very much feel drawn, to the death doulership, to making sure that that element is in the new world that we're currently co-creating. Dying well, not necessarily reaching for the medication to keep us alive, especially if we've reached old age, or especially if we're in a terminal disease. The old way, keep each other alive as long as possible, keep back the pain, keep back the illness. And Stephen says, no, this is the illness. This is the illness. On the medication, trying to eke out our lifestyle, our life force. What if we use what we've got left now to die well, to die honestly, to die at home? Not in the hospital, not with the doctors and nurses, but to just die naturally. and that the suffering is not seen as suffering with the old mind, but it's seen as the mystical mind, the perpetua and secular mind, the clair-of-assisi mind. They all had these prolonged periods of suffering, getting themselves ready. But they saw the suffering, the dying off of the body, as their way of experiencing their beloved on the cross. He speaks so much that we have this death phobia. That's why we're all like, mandatory vaccination. We've got this phobia against death, which is the time when we can really relax into this last feminine part of living life, in the sacred feminine, in the body. There's no escaping the body when it's dying and in pain. So it could be seen as a blessing. The last phase is a blessing to finally at last really be here. Of course, it's easy for me to say this. The body's healthy at the moment. Will I be saying it when it's my time? I really hope to God the answer's a yes. So there you go. There's another little last offering from the feminine. Dying well, dying honestly, dying naturally. And he always says that the way we die is our final offering to our family. That if we die well, we leave behind our legacy in our nearest and dearest. And this is precious. I saw one of my partners die a few years ago. I only had a few visits with him, but it was very real, and it was very honest, and it was very natural. And it frightened the bejesus out of me, because here it is, here's death, and here is someone I know and love very, very well. And they are literally slipping through my fingers as we share these last moments together. And to be honest, I was a little bit of a mess. I was a little bit of a state. Now, me and him, we had this secret hand squeeze, because he knew that I can get a little bit in social circumstances, and he was the extrovert. I know it seems like I'm the extrovert, I'm not. He was the extrovert, so he would like go into this social setting, and he'd feel me energetically go and he'd give me this special little squeeze, it was like a braille. It was like da 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 da, which meant it's okay, I'm going first, you'll be fine in a few minutes. Now, when I saw him in these last days, I obviously kind of did one of these. He had one arm that was operative because his stroke had taken 4/5 of his body. With the operative arm, he took my hand. He can't speak anymore. He's lost the use of speaking. And he gave me our special squeeze. He died well. And I'm carrying that in me. And I can't help feeling that's the beautiful qualities that could be waiting patiently for us to walk into, like little innocent children entering this paradise that's so unknown. But I can't help feeling there's interactions like that peppered throughout this new world.
A moment of death and a moment of birth. A moment of rebirth, in fact. Well, we're just coming up to time here. What can I say? I think you've taken us on a beautiful, profound journey into various different realms, into the light, into the dark, into the constriction, into the fear, into the love, into these different aspects of ourselves. And you've invited us to find the third way. Find the third way. And this is a hugely challenging task, but one, we can do it. We're born ready. That born ready part of us, we can do it, and we can do it all the more powerfully together.
Yes.
Not just on our own. And this really is the time, to come together, and we've come together in a small group today to do this kind of work, and this will resonate. This will resonate. And I again, I'm put in mind of the paneurythmy, that when we do these gestures of, let's say, giving and receiving, you can't have one without the other.
No.
To give and to receive, then we are sending out that impulse, by our own bodily gesture, by our thoughts, by our feelings, by our heart, by our mind, by our will, everything engaged. We're sending that out. And so I think we're sending out certainly some light from this. And you've got your thing. We can maybe blow these out together in a moment. So I'm incredibly grateful. I'm grieving because we're coming to the end of this session. But I'm so grateful for it. My heart is warm. My mind is light too. And I think I'll stop using any more words. But if people may want to put a little more into the chat, you can connect with Anaiya on her website, and I'm sure people will want to follow up in various different ways. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and we look forward to, hopefully you'll be able to join us later with Christine as well, so we can have some further interaction. But in the meantime, much love to everyone, and light, and we will blow out the candle together and see each other later.
Okay.
1,
3.
2,
Yes, there you go, David.
3, 2, 1. Thank you, everyone.